Legend tells us that in the early Bronze Age, Greece was not a single country. It was a land of powerful rival kingdoms: Mycenae, Sparta, Ithaca, Pylos. Each was ruled by a warrior king, all competing for power, for wealth, and for honor. These kingdoms controlled the seas, they dominated trade, and they built incredible stone palaces. This was the world of heroes. But across the Aegean Sea, in what is now modern-day Turkey, stood another great power, the city of Troy. Protected by massive, impenetrable walls and positioned right beside vital trade routes, Troy grew to become one of the wealthiest and most influential cities in the ancient world. Whoever controlled Troy controlled the gateway between Europe and Asia. For many years, Greece and Troy were not enemies. They traded with one another. Their people traveled between their lands. They respected each other's strength. But this fragile peace would not last forever. According to the timeless legend, the war that would change the world began not with an army, but with a single simple object: a golden apple. At a divine wedding attended by the gods, a feud erupted. Three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, argued over which of them was the most beautiful. To settle the dispute, they turned to a mortal, a young Trojan prince named Paris. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised him immense power to rule over kingdoms. Athena promised him unparalleled wisdom and victory in battle. But Aphrodite, the goddess of love, promised him something far more tempting. She promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose love. He chose Aphrodite. And in return, she promised him Helen of Sparta. Following this fateful judgment, Paris traveled to Sparta, where he was welcomed as an honored guest. But he did not return to Troy alone. He left with Helen. The stories disagree on what happened. Some say she was kidnapped, taken against her will. Others claim she fell in love with Paris and went willingly, abandoning her home and her husband. The truth of that moment remains a mystery, lost to time. But for the kings of Greece, the details didn't matter. Their honor had been violated. A guest had betrayed their trust and stolen a queen. And in their world, honor meant everything. Long before this, the most powerful kings of Greece had sworn a sacred oath. They had all once sought Helen's hand in marriage, and to prevent a war amongst themselves, they swore to protect her future marriage, no matter who she chose. Now that oath was called upon, Helen's husband, King Menelaus of Sparta, called for aid. And one by one, the rulers gathered their armies. His brother, the mighty King Agamemnon, the cunning Odysseus of Ithaca, the giant warrior Ajax, the wise old Nestor, and the greatest warrior the world had ever known, the demigod Achilles. Over 1,000 ships were prepared for war. It was the greatest army Greece had ever assembled, a force united by a single purpose: to bring Helen back and to burn Troy to the ground. The Greeks landed on the Trojan shores, expecting a swift victory. But Troy did not fall. Its legendary walls were too high, too strong. What the Greeks thought would be a quick battle turned into a brutal, grinding siege. What followed was not a matter of days or months, but 10 long years of bloodshed. The war was fought in raids on nearby towns, in ambushes in the dead of night, and in heroic duels on the dusty plains between the city and the sea. On both sides, heroes rose, their names echoing through eternity. And on both sides, heroes fell. As the years dragged on, the strain of war began to crack the Greek alliance. Conflict erupted, not with the Trojans, but among the Greeks themselves. The leader of the army, Agamemnon, publicly insulted Achilles, taking a prize of war that was rightfully his. Enraged by this deep dishonor, Achilles refused to fight. He withdrew himself and his elite soldiers from the battle. Without their greatest warrior, the Greek army weakened. Their morale crumbled. The Trojans, led by their noble prince Hector, saw their chance. They pushed the Greeks back, driving them all the way to their ships. For the first time, hope began to fade. Defeat seemed inevitable. Seeing the desperation of his countrymen, Achilles' closest friend and companion, Patroclus, begged him to return to the fight. When Achilles refused, Patroclus asked for his armor, hoping to inspire the troops by making them think their champion had returned. Achilles agreed, but warned him not to pursue the Trojans to the city walls. But Patroclus, caught in the fury of battle, forgot this warning. He was killed by Hector, the greatest prince of Troy. When Achilles heard the news, his world shattered. His deep grief turned into an all-consuming fury. He returned to war, not for honor, not for Greece, but for revenge. And this time, nothing could stop him. Outside the mighty walls of Troy, two legends finally met. Hector, the defender of his people, and Achilles, the unstoppable force of vengeance. Their duel was the climax of the war, a fight that shook the battlefield and silenced all others. They were the best of their generation, two warriors at the peak of their power. In the end, Hector fell. With his death, Troy lost its greatest defender, its brightest hope. Yet even then, with their champion gone, Troy did not surrender. The city's walls still stood. So the Greeks, exhausted by 10 years of failure, changed their strategy. They turned from brute force to deception. On the advice of the clever Odysseus, they built a massive wooden horse and left it on the beach as a supposed offering to the gods. Then, the entire Greek fleet sailed away, pretending to give up and return home. The Trojans, watching from their walls, were ecstatic. Believing the war was finally over, they celebrated their victory and, against the warnings of a few, brought the giant horse inside their city gates. It was a fatal mistake. That night, as the city of Troy slept, exhausted and celebrating, a hidden door on the horse opened. A small band of elite Greek soldiers, led by Odysseus, emerged from its belly. They crept through the silent streets, killed the guards, and threw open the main gates. The Greek army, which had only pretended to leave, had sailed back under the cover of darkness. They swarmed into the unsuspecting city. What followed was not a battle, but a massacre. Fire consumed the city of dreams. Palaces collapsed into rubble. Troy, the magnificent city that had stood for generations, was completely destroyed. After 10 long years, the war was over. But this victory came at a terrible price. There were no true victors in the Trojan War. Many of the great Greek heroes who had sailed for Troy never saw their homes again. Some were killed in the final assault. Some were cursed by the gods for their brutal actions and were lost at sea, like Odysseus, who wandered for another 10 years. The survivors who did make it back carried with them the haunting memories of horror and loss. The world of heroes was broken. Troy was gone, reduced to ash and memory. But its tragic story would live on for eternity. For centuries, many believed this epic tale was only a myth, a grand story created by poets. Until, in the late 19th century, archaeologists discovered ruins in modern-day Turkey that matched the descriptions of Troy. They found layers of a city repeatedly, destroyed and rebuilt. They unearthed ancient walls, weapons, and layers of ash. Physical evidence that suggested that behind the legend, there may have been a real, historical war. The Trojan War is more than just a story about battle and heroes. It's a timeless human story about pride, desire, ambition, and devastating loss. It serves as a powerful reminder that even the greatest and proudest civilizations can be brought to ruin. After the Trojan War, Greek legends say the age of heroes ended. And in history, something truly did collapse. Across the region, great kingdoms fell, sophisticated systems of writing vanished, and Greece entered a period known as the Dark Age, 4 centuries of silence. In a strange and haunting way, myth and reality had merged. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please like this video and subscribe for more stories from history and legend.